And oh, Reverend Diane, I didn't send you that.
Oh, that's all right. I can wing it.
Diane. And you are live. I'm going to send that to you right quick. Okay, we're live, and I'm going to be quiet.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Take a Stand, WCEG, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group's Internet Radio. And my name is Reverend Diane Dougherty. I am a Roman Catholic woman priest and have the great opportunity of interviewing wonderful people who are standing up to change the culture that we're living in. Two great people today. We have Kim Schofield, who is the House Representative for District 60, which is the district where East Point is, and also Daniel Blackman, who's in Forsyth County, running for the Public Service Commission. So these will be wonderful interviews, and I'm just so privileged to be calling Kim my friend, and also Daniel. So welcome, Kim Schofield. Been waiting for this for a long time.
Yes, we have.
Since you won your last election, we haven't really even seen each other.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you to my friend, Reverend Diane Dougherty, and to Penny at WCEG. It's an honor and a privilege to be here. So I am Representative Kim Schofield, a strong advocate, a political agitator, legislative policymaker in the Metro Atlanta area. I represent East Point, College Park, Forest Park, Southeast Atlanta, and Hapeville. I'm born in New York. I lived in Boston for a time, and then I traded in my New York pizza and headed south for sweet tea. I started advocacy work for people living with lupus as a part of the Georgia chapter of the Lupus Foundation. And that's because I'm a person who's been living with lupus for over 20 years.
Wow.
And I started that work to educate and inform the community, making lasting changes, and ended up realizing that under the Gold Dome, there was more education about lupus needed than beyond the state if we were going to really see some impactful change. So as I started working as an advocate for lupus under the Gold Dome, I became a lupus researcher with Emory University, the Grady Lupus Clinic for over 12 years now. Met you through our wonderful work and activist work that we did through 1 Billion Rising, which was that's our one, a great opportunity of our advocacy work to protect women's reproductive health and reproductive justice. And so throughout my life, I've been a part of what I believe is systemic barriers in race and education, in the workforce, in health and economics and religion. You and I share that. And now, especially in the legislative process, you know, that these things impede people from addressing their fundamental rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so these are not just mere foundational words as I've come to adapt them. These are words of humanity that tie us together so that we can be better, but often they're used to destroy us. So, you know, my transformative contribution and calling, and it is a calling, is to address these gaps through three words: alignment, action, and accountability. That's who I am.
Nice. Alignment, accountability.
Action and accountability.
Action and accountability.
That encompasses the who I am. If you know me, which you do, we have had more alignment, aligning systems that have been disjointed, and we do that through our action. And you and I have stand big and firm on accountability. And I think at this critical juncture in our time in society, on our day-to-day, that's what this nature, that's what our state, that's what people are calling for. We need to create a culture of accountability.
Love it. I love it. Watch out, people. Here comes Kim. It's really refreshing to hear women's voices. Most of us never paid any attention to politics or state and even local run organizations because we can never get our voices heard anyway. So I think in this age, especially for young people, to see you and hear you is a great gift to Georgia. Something that's actually pretty new because I've been here since 1970. And the complexion of legislation of the legislators really hasn't changed that much. Mm-hmm. What's the makeup of the House now in terms of women to men? And I have seen that picture on the steps. So there are quite a few women, but it's really nothing compared to the entire body.
No, I mean, so we have we have some strong women that are up there doing some great things. Our numbers are comparatively low when you look at some other states, but we know that it's changing. You know, we have a strong percentage, 180 members in the House, 56 in the Senate. We know that, you know, we have a large delegation of African-American women in the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus that are representing strong voices there. You know, we are still lagging behind on both parties, on both sides of the aisles, on strong women voices. We know that those that are in there are bringing power and using their voice, but there still is a very patriarchal system over there. And no longer, especially this new group of legislators that we continue to recruit and that come in strong and boldly, that we're no longer staying in our place. Our place is in the House. And so if I'm going to be in the House serving, then guess what? I'm really going to be not only in the House serving, I'm going to be at the table. I'm going to be outside the door. You know, I love people that use this whole, well, if you can't be at the table, you must be on the menu. No, if I'm not at the table, then you best to believe I'm waiting outside until the room empties, and I'm going to ask the hard questions. What did I miss in there? And what did I need to be? So, you know, we're going to not only see an increase in strong women voices, and we've seen that through Stacey Abrams and many women that have come up. It is just time that we can do more and get things done because of our ability to multitask, tri-task, quad task, but to make the decisions that need to be made. We're not just beating on our chest anymore for the testosterone power. We are now really ready to move this power to make logical decisions that affect and encompass a total person, as opposed to I'm waiting for my turn to speak. I've always had a turn to speak. It's time that we as women take that turn. We don't have to be asked anymore to run. That was the big stigma. We're not asked. We're doing it.
Now, in terms of the makeup, do you have those percentages on the tip of your tongue?
Not on the tip of my tongue. I don't want to give numbers that I have not. I know when I look around there, I'm gonna tell you this, that I'm proudly walking in, boldly walking in when I see the number of women that come in the House each year. When I see that some of the committees have more women stacked against them. So I know our numbers are not where they should be. So I don't want to give a misstated fact.
I was looking at the candidates for Georgia Win. Very, very impressive. That's an organization that is now championing a kind of mentoring women who are thinking about being in politics, because one of the problems women have is nobody, first of all, there's no one there. And secondly, if you want to become part of that culture, you don't know how to raise money. You don't know who's at your back. You're not sure. I mean, I just look at the docket of all those bills that go through and I think, oh my God, it's exhausting. And it's a part-time job. So going back to when you were asked and you said yes. Who mentored you?
So I have had some wonderful people along the way. Again, as you know me, I'm not waiting to be asked for anything. I had a problem and there was a lack of knowledge regarding lupus. That was a big gap that was not talked about in the state. And so when I got diagnosed, after about 8 years of doing advocacy work in the community, I said to my support group at that time, and said, I'm going to do something real bold and radical. I'm going to call under that gold dome and talk to every legislator, find out what they know about lupus. And I did. I called down there. I said, hey, my name is Kim. I have lupus. Hello. I hung up on, I got, just pushed to the side. So I went down there and I walked the halls, and everybody that had a badge on, I didn't care if it was blue, red, what it was Democrat, Republican, whether you were senator or House rep. I walked up to you, I extended my hand and say, hey, my name is Kim. I called your office yesterday. I think someone might have hung up, but I'm not really sure, but I'd love to talk to you about lupus. So that's how I stayed down there. I began to get into the system. It was Senator David Edelman that embraced me and my colleague, Betty McPherson, and we started learning. We started talking about lupus advocacy days, and went back to the chapter of the Lupus Foundation and said, hey, let's do an advocacy day. They were on board. We started bringing more people. There were people down in the Capitol like Senator Nan Orrock, who was my senator, who just would tell me how to get things done. There were just multiple people that were just good people. I was not a political person per se, but what I learned to be was an activist and an advocate for a voice that was voiceless. So I think the whole thing about mentorship is to finding someone that you would like to emulate or just be connected to. And I found out there were so many people down there. I remember reaching across the aisle and working with some key people. Senator Renee Unterman was a very good help to me early on. The fact that she was not a Democrat and she was
right.
Was great, because we had a common goal, and the goal was to fill the gap, close all voids, get a voice for lupus, and that's what I tried to do. So mentoring became less important to me as getting the action done. Along the way, people would stop and they'll pull you aside and say, this is what you need to do, and listen, don't ever do that again. So I got involved with WIN, and I met their team and the leader. I did one of their leadership programs. I met some wonderful women, up and coming leaders through WINless. I also was a part of the Georgia Women Policy Institute.
Yes.
And so that helped me and start shaping me, to give me access when I had questions. There were lobbyists that helped me along the way. So, you need a team of people in this space. You talked about raising money. I'm a person that is not afraid to talk, but I'm also not afraid to ask. And so it was coming back and saying, here's where I stand. These are my values, and they weren't my values because it was something I made. I went out there and talked to people. I was grassroots on the ground, because the thing that you think you know about people is the one thing that you're totally missing the mark. I thought they needed X. But really, the real key structure was they wanted Y. They wanted to end food deserts. They wanted access to healthcare. They wanted healthcare affordability. They wanted jobs. So the very foundational principles that I need every day for my life, they became the things that I wanted to advocate to increase the quality of life for others.
Cool. That's brilliant. Well, I wanted you to talk now about your, first of all, you have things you want to say. Before we start that, money, you brought it up slightly. I know you're not afraid to ask, but how can people help candidates that are positive like you and that have energy that you have to win their campaigns? Your district, as I looked on that map, is very African American. And I know that they support you. How do you work all that out?
Well, it's certainly not by the you said part-time work. I'm still waiting for that part-time work to roll in when you, it is full-time and then some. And, you know, people like to use the whole, well, we pay your salary. And let me just be clear, there's no way you can pay a legislator's salary. There is absolutely no way. One of the things that I have to be transparent with people is it used to be that we get $17,000 to do what we do for 367 days a year. I told you I had to add 2 extra days because there's just 365 days is not realistic when you are a legislator. So if you went down and price point the money that we are earning in this position, we actually make $4.14 an hour, which is lower than the Georgia minimum wage of $5.15. So, you know, fundraising, campaigning, all of that things are important to me as to help better strengthen my communities in areas of education and jobs and housing and programs that I know my community needs. They support me, yes, but we always need, especially when you look at COVID-19 exposed huge gaps in haves and have-nots, basic human needs in my community, basic economic development needs, unemployment. You know, we've got to talk about and address the systemic problems in the communities of color, you know, access to quality food, access to transportation. These things help me when you invest and impart physical dollars, time, all your resources. These help us move the needle forward. Education, changing a behavior and a culture is very hard to do. Some of that is not just an economic, it is a mindset and a culture shift. So yes, people can donate and contact me on my website of kimschofield.net, or you can reach me at kimschofield@gmail.com to get more information on how do you become a part of my team that again is promoting alignment, action, and a culture of accountability. That's the things that I stake my claim and want a strong team to be behind me in these things. We can change, and I see it happening, Diane. I'm so encouraged and optimistic on where we're going, but we've got a long road ahead to transform and dismantle old systems and use that creativity in innovative ways to start bringing us back together to define what true community looks like.
So the budget cuts, are you going to be indelibly impacted?
Absolutely, but let me be clear, I voted against the budget. And I'll tell you why I voted against that budget is because it does not help the people that are most vulnerable. And so there over the, I wanna say since COVID started, there was a group of House Caucus Democrats. We call ourselves the COVID-19 response team. And we were looking at all ways to help our community. Well, what happened was we started looking at the budget. And we were able to submit a alternative funding. What we did was we looked at the top percentage, the top 10 departments where all the money is housed or where your top funders are. And we did alternative fundings sources to come up with a plan that would help us not make so many drastic budget cuts. Right. Unfortunately, you know, this budget, it wasn't even considered. Our funding opportunity was not even considered. And when you look at things like how we, and I just want to say that what we did in this funding opportunity was we looked at leveraging revenues, repurposing tax credits, closing corporate welfare loopholes, and utilizing the CARES Act for funding. And just the mere fact that Georgia left so much money on the table with expanding and refusing to expand Medicaid, even though it would have covered more than 470,000 people. We left about $540 million on the table with a 9-to-1 match. You know, these were things that we could have done. Failure to pass a tobacco and equity tax. You know, when you look at just that much money would have produced over $600 million in additional funding. We're at 37 cents a pack for tobacco. We're not even at the national average. If we had just raised that, we would have raised $230 million for this, you know, for us to start looking at how do we bring back rural health and hospitals? How do we help our teachers? How do we help those that are most vulnerable? But to say Georgia refused to even look at that and rather protect cheap tobacco over the lives of people is disgusting.
Yeah, you could run for governor. I'll vote for you.
No, I mean, these were basic things that we took that budget and we pulled it apart. So what we did was we found that this budget is a travesty, and it really is a disgusting indictment on Georgia for us to lift this up and say this is the best we can do, because I really strongly believe if we had submitted this budget and didn't have any names attached or party affiliation, someone would have grabbed this budget and they would have touted it like it was the best creative and innovative strategy that we've seen for the state of Georgia in a long time. We missed an opportunity here. So, you know, that's it. I think one of the, you know, I'm proud of that we passed the hate crimes bill, but that's just the first step of many steps.
That's right. We
were able to track more of the data of the hate crimes and put a database in. Yes, that's good. Another thing I'm proud of is that we passed Senate Bill 359, the surprise billing. That was something that we've been working on for a long time. But Diane, we also have to talk about when we're dealing with systemic racism, we've got to deal with legislative racism too. You know, I mean, we've got to, let's not forget to talk about how oppressive the system is. Ask yourself how many House Democratic bills got passed or even got out of committee. Ask yourself, you know, we didn't even get hearings on them. And it's not just a party issue, it is a race issue. It is a gender issue. We've got to start talking about the legislative racism amongst the leadership in the committees up there, and stop pretending like this thing is not real and it doesn't impact our people and our base.
Fire words. Well, I can't thank you enough. I see Daniel is here. And I wondered before Daniel gets on, is there anything else you want to say?
Well, you know, I know that Georgia is changing. Okay, change is not necessarily a bad thing. Change is, in order for us not to move to plateau, we need some transformation and some change. I'm glad to be a part of this. I'm glad that the people of Georgia have confidence in me to make sure that I'm on the part of history. Having just watched Hamilton again seen it twice. I watched it twice this weekend. I'm going to say I'm not throwing away my shot, but I'm also going to say I'm glad to be in the room where it happens. And I want those that want to join me to help us get better, to bring back that alignment, that action, and that create that culture of accountability, to give my office a call at 404-656-0220. That's 404-656-0220, and to join me. Kim stands for Keep It Moving.
Yeah, I love it. Keep it moving. I forgot to say that.
Keep it moving.
Keep it moving, Kim.
Yes, we're going to always keep it moving, and I stand in a line with those that are paving the way, that need a mentor, that want to run but are afraid to step out and try. I'm here to help you get to that finish line. You know, I'm here to help us make a difference and to change this culture. The time is now. The time's up, but the time is also now. Let's not throw.
I'm telling you, both of you are the same. Daniel Blackman, I swear, you're like two peas in a pod. Do you remember Daniel, Kim? He came to a couple of 1 Billion Rising.
Yes. Yes, and he's a firehouse. I mean, we need more strong leaders like him, not afraid to do it and just step out there even when it's uncomfortable. We're not in here for a popularity contest. I'm here to get stuff done. Keep it moving.
So much. Well, you can, of course, stay on if you want. We're going to talk a little bit to Daniel, who just came on, and Daniel's running for the public service commissioner. Daniel, tell us a little bit about yourself and about why would you do that in Forsyth County, most particularly. I admire you. I checked the logistics of your county, and I said, "Whoa!"
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, to Kim, I want to say thank you to her. She is a hard act to follow, but I like the acronym "Keep It Moving," so I'm going to go ahead and run with that one for now. But the Public Service Commission is unique. But the first thing that I'll say to all of those who are watching is Democrats for a long time held every statewide constitutional office in Georgia. As we all know, that for the last 20 years, Democrats do not hold not one statewide constitutional office. That is governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, attorney general, labor commissioner, and so on and so forth. But the first seat in the state of Georgia that Republicans were able to flip was the Public Service Commission. And I hope that the work that we're attempting to do and that we're committed to doing is going to allow us to begin to put our state on a trajectory towards leadership and commitment, not just from a moral and ethical standpoint, but just because it's the right thing to do. So for those of you that don't know about the Public Service Commission, the Public Service Commission is the regulatory body of the state of Georgia as it relates to your public utilities. So for those of us who unfortunately are struggling and have not yet recovered from the COVID-19 pandemic, we all understand that there are many barriers that we have faced. Wireless broadband in rural areas. Many young children around the state of Georgia have had to drive to the parking lots of McDonald's and Chick-fil-A just to use the internet. And the Public Service Commission is responsible not only for the vision and the execution of those kind of utility deployments, but it's also responsible to make sure that the utility providers in the state provide safe, reliable, and affordable energy to all of our citizens. And I'm saddened to say today on your show that as of July 1st, the moratorium on utility cutoffs or disconnections as it relates to gas has ended. And as it relates to electric, it will end on the 14th of July. So we have our work cut out for us. We have a commission that has voted time and time again for rate increases throughout the state. And while there have been a handful of good things that have happened as it relates to solar in the state of Georgia, the overwhelming majority of the financial challenges that we face, from Plant Vogel to our coal ash cleanup to how we are charging people or overcharging people, especially senior citizens on a fixed income, is a tremendous burden. And I hope once elected, I will be able to be a voice of the people so that we can start to have ratepayer and consumer-friendly policies that protect our most vulnerable communities.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I was looking at your opponent, the incumbent, I should say, Lauren McDonald. He's been in there for so long. How do you expect to, Bubba? What can we do to help increase your chances of winning?
Well, here's the good news. This primary, I want to first say thank you to John Knoll. John Knoll is a good Democrat that ran against me in the primary, and John, he pushed me. John was the kind of person that was very focused on his platform, his ideology, and his strategy, and it made us better, made us sharper, it made us want to focus and commit more to making sure that we fully extended the opportunities that we had, not just to the solar industry, but to women and minority-owned businesses that have not yet broken into the energy and utility regulation space. We wanted to open that door to rural Georgia, coastal Georgia, mountainous Georgia, and Forsyth County, where I live, all the way up to Raven County, and all the way south down to Valdosta. So we wanted to create a plan that was inclusive of this whole state. So to answer your question, first and foremost, Mr. McDonald is the co-chair of Mr. Trump's presidency. He is the Georgia co-chair of Trump for America, or I'm not even sure what you would call it, but the Make America Great Again movement is co-chaired by my opponent. He is on record of saying that when the president released the stimulus monies, that folks should have been able to get caught up on their utility payments, even though we were behind in so many other areas. You know, this is a gentleman that has worked and has done a decent job for solar. I'll give him his credit where credit is due, but the challenges are he is, you know, almost solely responsible for the Plant Vogtle expansion that we are currently paying for. It's billions over budget, years behind schedule. On top of that, your grandchildren, my children, and their children will be paying for Plant Vogtle for the next 60 years. So the difference between me and this gentleman is very clear. One of us has progressive ideas that are inclusive of every single zip code and every single tax bracket. The other individual is focused on being friendly to the utility industry and publicly friendly. And I'll say this, you know, to make sure that we fundamentally understand the importance of this position. This is the only statewide constitutional office on the ballot this year. If we are able to work hard and to be elected in this position, then what happened to Stacey Abrams may very well not happen again, because if we can get a Democrat elected and we can start organizing each of the 159 counties, we would have a much better chance of winning in 2022 during the midterm. Obviously, we got to get our 2 U.S. senators elected. We got to get me elected. We got to get Joe Biden elected. But at the end of the day, we've got to do our part to make sure Georgia is able to go in the direction that's in the best interest of the communities we serve.
Wow. Tell me a little bit about Plant Vogtle. The last I heard was that it was suspended because the company went bankrupt.
No. So that was in South Carolina. So the project in South Carolina went bankrupt. And what I'll say to those of you who are paying attention and who are looking at it, the South Carolina model is probably the best example of the type of ditch that we've dug for ourselves, the financial cliff that we've gone over. And as a matter of fact, Georgia, the Plant Vogtle construction was initially around about a $14 billion project, which has exploded to a $27.8 billion project. On top of that, we have seen the overruns onto the ratepayers. So if you have a utility bill, I would encourage every single person that has a utility bill in Georgia to look at your itemized bill. Request what is called an itemized bill that shows line for line what you're paying for. On your bill, for our schools, for our churches, for our families, our working families, our senior citizens, you'll see that you have something called nuclear cost construction recovery. That is your upfront bill for a nuclear reactor that's not online currently. We are currently building Vogtle 3 and 4. We have seen a heavy burden on the ratepayer and not an ounce of a burden, but profitability for the shareholders of Georgia Power. And that is a tremendous burden. It's a tremendous problem. It's unethical. And in my opinion, I think we need to be able to address those issues. So Vogtle, for those of you who don't know, we currently have Vogtle 1 and 2, 2 nuclear reactors that power our Georgia, one of our main sources of power in the state of Georgia. We're currently constructing Vogtle 3 and 4. What that means is that we are extending this to be able to generate more power. But the problem with that ideology is that Vogtle 1 and 2 are currently at about 53 or 54% capacity. We're not even really using the first 2, but we're spending billions of dollars to build 2 new nuclear reactors at the expense of not investing into renewable energy around the country. So for us, we need to be able to start thinking of 3 things. Number 1, the public health and the safety of our communities. There's tritium in the Savannah River site. Tritium is what pollutes water, and it comes from the cooling towers of our nuclear facilities, and it affects the reproductive systems in the drinking water of our women. So we need to address those issues. We need to look at the fact of how fossil fuels have affected 68% of the communities of color that they stand in, which has an overt impact on young Black and brown boys and girls around this country that are getting asthma 3 times the national rate. And this is a direct result of places like Plant Sharer, which was in Macon, Georgia, and other coal-fired facilities that we have not really addressed. So for myself, I would just implore everyone to understand that I'm running against an individual that has been in elected office for a long time. I believe in term limits. I believe that we should be able to serve and there should be able to be measurable progress. And if you simply look at the record of how my opponent voted, if you follow the money, as many people like to say, you'll see that he's taken over $24,000 in lobbyist money. You'll see that he has done, quite frankly, if you wanted to rate him with a report card, I'm not going to tell you what to give him, but what I would say to everybody that's watching is that I think you'd be very disappointed with the way in which he has voted to protect consumers as it relates to utility regulation on our power bills. And quite frankly, we've got to change that. And it starts one seat at a time. And I believe within the next 2 election cycles, we can totally control the vote at the Public Service Commission and in the interest of the people of Georgia.
So what is who's on your campaign and how are they promoting your?
So if I heard you correctly, because you went out for a second, who's on my campaign and how they help me promote my race? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we've got a team that consists of about 3 or 4 individuals that have really helped to fuel this process. But we've got an army of volunteers that have done a phenomenal job. For anybody who has signed up at danielforgeorgia.com, we appreciate it. We've got folks that are part of organizations, civic organizations. We've got interfaith leaders. We've got individuals that are what we have designated as regional directors and county captains. We're building and amassing a team of Georgians that are volunteering because they believe that the future of Georgia is blue. They believe in building out a bench, and they believe that every single county should be in play. What my campaign team is doing directly is one of 3 things, if not all combined. One, they're making sure that we leave not one county unengaged. Every single county in this state, in the state of Georgia, we will engage, whether that is speaking to an individual, an organization, a civic group, or a church. We'll do everything we can virtually to make sure that we can touch these counties, because I'll have to say this publicly, as Democrats, we haven't done a good enough job outside of the perimeter. I think we've made progress, but we've got to make sure that these counties are being more inclusive in the conversation. Number 2, we're bringing people to the table that might not share all of our ideas. They might not share all of our policy platforms, but they're bringing new, fresh ideas to us. And for example, I had a chance to speak to some young people that were very much focused on building an opportunity for workforce development in the state of Georgia. What they were saying was, Daniel, we're out here marching for climate change. We're out here standing for the Green New Deal. We're out here fighting against an administration that is cutting science spending and underfunding projects that promote clean energy. But when we graduate from college, we don't know where the jobs are. So I want to create one of the most comprehensive plans that has ever been created in the state of Georgia as a public service commissioner, working with our Georgia legislators, our House members and Senate members, that can focus on utilizing our historically Black colleges and our technical colleges throughout the state of Georgia as training hubs that can allow us to begin to create 2 things. 1, a workforce that reflects our population. Too often we're seeing utility companies that don't have a lot of people of color or young people, and a lot of times the policies that are coming out are adversely affecting those communities. And then secondly, we need to make sure we're funding historically Black colleges like Fort Valley State University, Savannah State, Clark Atlanta, Spelman College, and Morehouse College. We have the infrastructure in the state of Georgia to be able to fund these schools for research, but also to build our workforce. So we've been doing a lot about listening, hearing ideas, and we're really excited. We think we have a really good chance to win in November without a runoff, and we're saying that humbly. We've worked really hard, and we feel if we do our job and bring the people into the conversation, that there are a lot of Democrats running in 2020 that will come out victorious on November 3rd if we all come in and work against the forces that are trying to suppress our votes.
I'm salivating.
I appreciate it. We're excited, but I mean, you know me, Diane. I've been doing this for a long time. And I think it's important for us to know these positions are critical. And I would encourage everyone listening that I don't care if it's President, U.S. Senate, Public Service Commission, and dog catcher. You vote for every single position on your ballot. Do not leave one race, whether it is a judge or it's a county commissioner, a school board member, a city council member. We've got to make sure we're going up and down the ballot. And I think the Public Service Commission is extremely unique because COVID has adversely affected our communities, and we need our lights on, especially since the summer is about to be really hot. And we need to make sure that we're protecting our most vulnerable communities.
Tell one more thing about your position on the Public Service Commission and voting. One of the problems is paper ballots.
Yes.
The other is early voting. In terms of making sure your vote counts, how can you? Well, you Kim, you were writing that you turned in your request for an absentee ballot. It didn't come until almost 2 days before. I turned mine in, and I didn't realize I had already voted. I thought it was my application for an absentee ballot. So how can we deal with a suppression that we know is coming ahead of time? How can we strategize so that I know you got a whole bunch of work to do in terms of campaign, and you shouldn't have to be dealing with this. But the reality is, if we don't deal with it, then those roadblocks will be put up. And on the day of voting, forget it.
Well, there's a couple of things. I mean, one, our good friend Helen Butler has been doing a phenomenal job around the state with organizing and making people aware. What I would say is to different audiences, number one, to county commissioners, to leaders within the Democratic Party, I would really encourage you to start building the infrastructure now. We have seen time and time again an unfriendly legislative body that has not put things in place to protect us for the long run. We know what we're going to be hit with. We're dealing with a governor that was a former Secretary of State. So we need to be very proactive. You know, if you are a Democrat right now, I understand that COVID-19 has impeded our ability to knock on doors and to socially interact the way we would like to. But I would encourage everyone to find a campaign, find a civic organization. I'm a board member of the Georgia ACLU. Find an organization that you can make calls for, write letters for, put stamps on and drop in a mailbox. This is a time in history where we need all hands on deck. So every one of us can find a way to serve. We've got 4 months until the next election, and it's days on and not days off. So that's the first thing I would encourage people to do. Work individually in your counties and your communities and find a campaign to be a part of. Number two, to everyone watching and everyone listening, you may not be a part of a civic organization. You may not have a leadership role, but what you do have is the ability to go out and to learn and self-educate yourself. Start learning now about polling places. Start learning about early voting and absentee ballots. If you had any discrepancies in the last time you had a chance to go out there and try to participate, then I would encourage you to make sure that you're learning now where your polling places are, what has changed, who is your state rep, who is your county official. Start asking questions now. The day before the election is not the time to ask. The week before the election is not the time to ask. You need to know right now, are you registered? If you voted, how did that process go? What were the obstacles and barriers? We've got to be proactive and take self-responsibility. Is it the responsibility of our elected officials and our leadership? Of course it is. But there's also an aspect of personal responsibility where we have to say enough is enough. We've got to stop desensitizing ourselves to the police interactions that we're seeing. And not all police are bad, but we've seen enough cases where we're outraged. If our outrage moves us to protest, but not to the ballot box, we're not doing our part. So we need to make sure that we're encouraging our neighbors, our family members, and our friends to vote. And I'll say that the last part I'll say is, if you're a young person and you are not able to vote, you are not exempt. And this is what I mean. In 2008, I worked with Usher. I worked with Reverend Joseph Lowry. God bless his soul. He was a mentor of mine. And what we did was we created a campaign called I Can't, But You Can. Again, that campaign was called I Can't, But You Can. And what we did was we got 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds and 15-year-olds to encourage their mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, and grandparents to vote if they were of voting age. And we did that and registered over 180,000 new voters. And the reason why that's important is because, again, all hands on deck. If everyone does their part, no matter what they try to throw at us on November the 3rd, we'll be able to get beyond it. And one of the things we're doing specifically, we've got two high profile, my campaign specifically, we have two high profile attorneys out of California that are going to be here doing voter protection on the day of the election. We just confirmed our second one. We spoke to Eric Sawell, who's out of California, and he's a former prosecutor, and Eric is a good friend of mine. So they're watching Georgia, they're watching North Carolina, they're watching Alabama, Florida. They are watching it to make sure that what we saw with George Bush in 2001 doesn't happen again in 2020.
God bless us all. Well, that's wonderful. There's so much of what you both have said that could be campaign stickers.
Hey, look, keep it moving is the best thing I heard today. So I'll stick with that one.
No, Daniel, we're going to be working together. And I mean, your points were spot on. I mean, again, the accountability piece is huge. You can't expect us to do it all, but your 3 points were crucial on how we're going to change this state blue and how we're going to get it done. Not only that, is when you become engaged, you'll discover gifts in your personal talents that you never knew. The opportunities for you to grow personally are so embedded in your engagement. So I want people to know that this is a part of how you grow as a human being. You won't be young forever. You're going to need to know about schools. You're going to need to know about the jobs in your area and housing. So this is the time for engagement. I love that I Can't, You Can. I did a program in South Atlanta High School called Your Vote, My Voice, My Vote. And it was the same thing. You may not be able to vote, but you can influence your parents and your family members. We've got to get that together. Listen, to all that are listening, we know the shenanigans. We know the way that they're coming. They're not fooling us. We're not ignorant of their devices, but here's what we do know, is that it doesn't matter how long it takes you at the poll. You bring a folding chair, you pack your cooler, you bring a blanket, you bring whatever you can bring, but you're going to stay in line because we will vote them out. We're going to win this, hands down. Expect them to throw everything but the kitchen sink. And we're working behind the scenes as legislators and to make sure things are in order. But we know they're going to try everything.
That's right.
But we're resilient and we will not be played this time.
And if I could add this too, one thing that was just mentioned, I couldn't agree with her more. I had my brother and another young man that had never voted before. They both called me at 7 o'clock in the morning, and what they said brought tears to my eyes. You know, my brother said, he said, if you weren't on the ballot, I don't know that I would stand out here this long. And it gave me an opportunity to speak to my brother. And I said, look, even if I wasn't on the ballot, I said, you stand out there as long as you have to because your vote matters. Had another young man who said that he waited online for about 3 hours and he voted. And I had never met this young man, but he sent me a direct message on Facebook. And he said, you know what? He said, I felt like if I could stand out all night in Atlanta and protest, I could stand online and vote. And these are the conversations that are inspiring me because I understand fundamentally how long I've been out here and have done the work. But many times, we seem to get discouraged because we don't really know the impact we have on the lives of other people that are watching us that we never get to meet. So to hear these stories of what people endured and to see people that are saying, you know what, enough is enough. There's not going to be another protest that I go to without having some kind of action item to do when all the trauma ends, when it's not being shown on the news anymore, when it's not the topic on the radio station. Something on the inside of each and every one of us has to motivate us to do what's right, and that's to cast the ballot and to make sure that what folks died for, we stand up and live and fight for every day.
Voting for Daniel. If you're listening now, you're voting for Daniel. Everybody's voting for Daniel.
Vote for him. I love it. Well, I want to thank, our time is just about up. And I want to thank both of you for taking time out to join me in this very important conversation that we have. It'll be on Facebook, and we've also live streamed it, so you'll get a link. You can pass it around. What you all have talked about is just really, really important, and you've given so many people an idea what they can do right now, because that's where I think people are overwhelmed, but cannot think, well, listen to them. I can never be like that. That would be me. But, everybody can do something. And especially these young kids, I love that idea. I can't, you can. Get out, vote. And I'll tell you, that's what white people do, is they push voting out the door. But they also make sure that those legislators have the ideas that are important to them. One of my great regrets is white people do not see African Americans as part of themselves. And the way that I see it is Georgia belongs to a great, diverse, we're the most beautiful picture of God that anybody could ever hope to see. And God is an energy that wants our land taken care of, our people taken care of, our children taken care of. And while corporations play a part in managing that care, we are the ones that create the legislation, equalizes it and spreads it out so that all have a chance. And I thank both of you and Penny Rogers for setting up WCEG. We have a couple minutes if either of you want to say and
Thank you. On mute. And I just want to thank you, Diane, for your passion. Your passion has always led into purpose, and it's produced action. From the time that I've known you, you stood out there and impressed me and said, I'm a priest, a woman priest that, gets things done. And you have. Thank you, Penny, for being in East Point and for all that you do. And to Daniel, I look forward to working together. I look forward to the victory party. You are exactly what Georgia needs right now.
yes.
For myself, I continue to be grateful to being able to be part of the solution, and will stop. As much as you want me to pass good bills, I am committed to stopping bad bills. So let's remain focused. Let's remain furious. Let's remain fierce. And let's get this back. Let's get us back on the right track.
First of all, I want to thank both of you. And what I will say is there's a quote that Dr. King mentioned that says, in the end, we won't remember the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. And I think that we all owe it to each other to not be silent as to this time in history. I grew up in a time, my mother and father are from Barbados. My grandfather immigrated here and he was a diplomat to the United Nations. And so I come from a family that is a very prideful family and has worked for everything that they've had, but that we fundamentally understood that nothing came by ourselves. And we understand the importance of our community. And I remember growing up, I always used to say, I don't know what I would have done during the civil rights movement if I lived in the 60s. I don't know what I would have done if I lived during the Jim Crow era. And it's easy for us to look at history and say what we would or would not have done. But our 1968 is 2020. Our Jim Crow era is the Trump administration. Our era of slavery is mass incarceration. So while I am running for the Public Service Commission, which doesn't have anything to do with criminal justice reform and doesn't have anything to do with some of the issues we like to just, put out front, it does have something to do with human rights and environmental justice. And if you believe in, and if you're saying Black Lives Matter, if you believe in the community, if you believe in gender equity, if you believe in any of those issues that we talk about, then if you're not paying attention to climate change and the environment, then you're doing yourself a disservice. My name is Daniel Blackman. You can find me at danielforgeorgia.com. That's Daniel, F-O-R, and then georgia.com. I'll put it in the comments. And I want to thank you for opening this door. And Kim, I look forward to working with you as well. And I think we have a long road ahead. So I'm looking forward to the journey.
Love it. And also early voting, for those of you that don't know, is July 20th to August 7th. And there's an election on Tuesday, August 11th. So mark those dates down also.
Thank you all so much.
It's been a wonderful gift. Signing off for Take a Stand. This is WCEG, the Worldwide Community Empowerment Group. God bless you all.
Thank you.